Thank you for coming. This is year 136 for all of us. And I have more to tell you than time permits. So as we go through this, you will see a number of numbers on the screen, and I will address some of them. I know some of you will read past them, but these slides will be available to use, but I'm just qualifying in advance. It's like, why didn't he talk about everything? It's because I want to get through everything. So we'll get started. Why is this not? Oh, there we go. The agenda, we're going to do four things. First, a really short glimpse of our history, something I think you might find interesting. Then a very large part about the current state of our city. Then talking about what's next. And then we hope to leave you all with a song in your heart. Why is my... Oh, there we go. So our first city council, they got very busy. In the first 3 months, they did 3 ordinances. The very first one was to go after alcohol. So their very first ordinance was to control the sale of alcohol, and the fee to sell it was $500, which is about $20,000 today. The second thing they decided to go after was, why is this? Right? And you can see the fines were not more than $5, or not less than $5 or more than $50. And then ordinance number 3 was, I'm not happy about this. Oh, there we go. Was about gambling. And who knew that shuffleboard was such a high risk? Clearly they had not been introduced to pétanque, right? So the first council, those are the first 3 things that they did. One of the things that I hope you walk out with today is an appreciation and an understanding of the vast range of services that the city does provide you. I know we all interface with the city at different levels, but I'm hoping you'll get a sense of the full range, and then also the breadth of how much within each of those sort of areas that the city provides, and then the scale of some of those things. So I'm hoping that will be one of the outcomes of today. I am not happy. Maybe we can swap to the other one. Excuse me. We brought 3 of these. Always have a plan B and C. No? You lied to me. There we go. Whoops. All right, see, I've already lost time. I'm a fan of metrics, because metrics can tell you how are you doing compared to where you want to be. Are we making progress? Do we need to course correct? Do we have a prayer of making it? They can also tell you how far have we come compared to where we were, and it also can tell you how are we doing compared to others. And you're going to see some of those used today. And my godson, when he brought home his very first report card, the metrics were sometimes, usually, and always, which I think maybe, we're going to do better than that. We're going to go through each of the departments to get a sense of the service areas, and we're going to start with police. Our police department has been accredited, and accredited. This is not an easy thing. There are over 200 elements that they have to get through. Many cities in the state have an issue getting through this and actually reach out to us for tips and how to do things better. I am not happy. These are some of the crimes that have been taking place in Edmonds last year. I know we all feel that in many ways we live in a safe city, and you should feel that way because we have a great police force, but I think it's also important to understand that there is crime in Edmonds, and this is what it looks like. I'm going to point out the 139 for drugs and narcotics. I'm going to come back to that in a second. These are the weapons that are used in the crime in Edmonds. That big one in the middle is labeled personal weapons, which means your hand, your leg, your teeth. Not all cries for help are about crime. We have a lot of people in Edmonds who are living on the edge, and you can see in the scale in the right that it is very diverse among all age groups. And you can also see that many individuals face many other challenges. We also, our human services group also tries to help people in need. Last year they helped over 200 people, and we work a lot with our community partners and trying to partner to get them the kind of help through agencies that exist. It does have a human impact. These are lives that we're talking about. There was a couple that had been living on the streets for several years, and our social worker was able to finally get them into a shelter while they can look for permanent housing. Collisions, you can see the trend. This is again one of the metrics compared to where we were. The trend in collisions is down. There's what's called the 3 E's for this kind of thing. One is engineering, so like the big barrier on 99 now, the attractive median, that has already reduced accidents. In addition, it's education, helping to try to get people to understand their behaviors better, and then enforcement, as this would demonstrate. DUI arrests are up, so interesting that DUI is up, but accidents are down. I mentioned the drug offenses before. This is how those look in terms of percentages of the drug crimes. We have what's affectionately known as the PSET group, the problem-solving emphasis team. These are folks who are proactive. They do investigations and they look for a way to find the people and get those people off the streets and their weapons off the streets and the drugs off their streets. Last year alone, they seized 15 ounces of fentanyl. And you can read the statistics on the right about the impact of that. That 15 ounces, that's the weight of this can. 15 ounces is this, and that's enough fentanyl to kill 200,000 people. And our police got it off the streets. Public records request, I'll talk about this a couple times tonight. You need information and want information, and public requests is yet another way to get that. The police department alone got 1,200 of those, and 1,082 of those were processed by one individual. And this is Pi. Pi, would you stand up so people can meet you? This is Pi. Another metrics, right? How are we doing compared to where we were? So this is police staffing levels back to 2021. And you can see that over here in 2026, so 21 through 26, we have fewer police than we did back then. It grew for a while and then it shrunk. So we have fewer police than we did in 2021. Another metric is how are we doing compared to others in the area. Now, an important statistic for this one is Washington State is the worst state in the country for the number of police per capita, so the number of police for the population, for 15 years running. This has been the worst state for the ratio between police and residents. And you can see where Edmonds compares to Linwood, Issaquah, Bothell, Redmond, Montlake Terrace, and Renton. Let's talk about Public Works. They are our biggest department. These are the kinds of services that they provide, and I'm going to talk a little bit about each of these. We have 24 buildings, and our facilities group takes care of all of them. The plumbing, the mechanical, the electrical, furnishing, everything. And we try to get them to extend their life beyond what they should be. And that is through not only custodial services, but also capital projects. Last year, they improved the buildings with 24 capital projects, and this year we're hoping to do 40. We have 215 vehicles in our fleet, from the little parking enforcement vehicle that you've seen before to these monster trucks and the vac trucks. And extending those beyond their life means keeping them maintained on time. And 95% of the time, under their metrics, we count these things, they're hitting it. And they fix things when they break. And we also are very, very big on safety. Accidents, 10 last year, and that was a 20% reduction from the year before. We also try to have a green fleet, which is keeping 72,000 pounds of CO2 out of the air. Streets, this is one of those places, right? We interact with the city and streets how many times a day? And that's one of the ways you interact with the city and what we do to try to help you. How do you move people and goods where they want to go? Potholes, fixing those, adding repairs. Over 8,000 street signs fixed and maintained. Engineering capital. So the second one, I'm going to talk a little bit about the sewer lines cured in place. You can see sort of the picture in the past, when something breaks, it'd have to rip up the street, take out the pipes. Cured in place means, think of it as a stent a stent for our pipes. So they literally go in and cure it in place, just like a stent. And it not only prevents all that kind of disruption and cost, it also extends the life of our pipes by 50 years. And you can see the other kinds of things that they've done. Sewer collection, so this is after you flush. Now, just a reminder that in our wastewater treatment plant, there's two sides, right? There's the water side and there's a solid side. And I'll talk about the solid side later. And no judgment, but 4 million gallons a day, everybody, is going through our sewage treatment plant. And we have to keep that moving. And every so often, one of these things will back up or it'll break, and we unclog them. Again, no judgment. Oops, past this. Stormwater. Recently we went through this monster flooding, and we missed a big part of that, knock wood. But we also could have had bigger damage than we did, because our crew is out there making sure and maintaining our system to move all of that water appropriately. We have 7,000 of those catch basins, and last year they cleaned out 3,000 of those, and also to make sure that we are keeping pollutants out of the sound. Engineering and private development, so building, planning, and engineering permits, over 1,300 permits were reviewed last year. You can see the number of issues. Inspections, you'll see a few numbers about inspections going out and making sure that people comply with the rules. Another place that we interact with you on a daily basis, multiple times, is how often do you go and get that glass of water, or give it to your child, or take a shower, and know that it is safe and that you rely on it. We interact with you multiple times with the water system. And you can see also that we want to make sure there's plenty of it, so we store 7.5 million gallons. That's also just in case there's fire. A couple of fun facts here: 1,200 fire hydrants, 10,000 water meters. Also, we have a system to make sure that the pressure is consistent no matter where you are in the city. It's a big problem. And I'd like to introduce you to the guy who makes that happen. Brett, would you stand up so people can see you? Thank you, Brett. I am thankful for Brett with every sip. Planning and development. So over 1,600 building permits. So this isn't necessarily new buildings, right? You want to build a deck, you need a permit. So over 1,600 permits last year. In terms of the new housing permits, there has been a lot of talk for a lot of years about Edmonds needs a much more diverse housing inventory in stock, right? From somebody trying to get in for their first house to older people who might not need as much room and want to downsize, and where are you going to go? I want to stay in Edmonds, but there aren't a lot of options. So part of what's going on here is providing that kind of opportunity. Multifamily, there was just one last year for 6 units, 18 single-family homes. Accessory dwelling units have been around for a while. New to us is the detached accessory dwelling units. Part of that is what was imposed on us by the state. But the good news is it diversify our housing stock. Hopefully it will help make things more affordable as well. There were 30 applications and 15 of those were issued. People need help going through this process, and our folks are very good at helping them. We're going to try to make the process even better in the future, but you can see the number of phone calls and in-person contacts to try to help people. Again, making sure that people follow the rules. So going out and laying eyes on things and making sure that things are being done as they should be, to make sure that every dwelling we walk into is safe and will be around for a while. Not everybody follows the rules, and sometimes we have to use code enforcements. So there were 164 of those last year. 142 were resolved, which is good news. Development code updates. So constantly evolving as new information and technology provides, and as the council might review and think other kinds of codes might be helpful. So trying to, again, increase the capacity in middle housing. As we think about the city and the housing requirements that we have, where do we put those people? Do we want density the same everywhere? And through this process, we identified centers and hubs to concentrate these kinds of densities in different parts of the city, so people can also choose the kind of lifestyle they want in the city. And then critical area ordinances, of course, are trying to make sure that where we build protects the sensitive ecosystem that we live in. Always trying to improve what we do. There is a process, many in the room probably have heard of it, it's called the lean process. We brought in the state auditors. They have strong opinions about things and literally analyzed every piece of our process to say, here's how we can make it better. And then we also introduced new software because we want to be able to not only stream workflows and make it easier for everybody, but also get good data back so that we can make good decisions. Again, back to metrics. I'd like you to meet the person who is the force behind it. Kristen. Parks. I love our parks. We are an unusual city in the diversity of assets that we have as parks. You can see the size, right? 230 acres of parks and open spaces, but we also have a waterfront. And we also have athletic fields and an outdoor pool in the woods and a skate park and a fishing pier. This is not common in parks, and it takes a lot to keep all that in the way we love it. And on any sunny day, we fill them up. If you're in the parks business, you're in the tree and shrub business, and that means planting over 430 of them. If you want to keep them alive, you've got to prune them and care for them, and all of the things that I talked about without hardly any detail. The Parks Department did that while also reducing their expenses by $250,000, and they also reduced water consumption by 7% in an interest to not only save money, but also preserve water. You might not have known this. Parks Department is responsible for 191 trash bins in the city. That's a lot. And again, no judgment, but we're generating 200,000 pounds of trash just in those trash bins. And somebody's got to handle that. And I'd like you to meet the guy. Jack, would you stand up? Jack. Also unique to a city is we own and operate a cemetery, and this is one of those times when we have to help people through one of the hardest things in their lives. And as you can see, we do it a number of times every year. We also ensure twice a year that we are honoring veterans as best we can in that kind of an environment. Recreation, right? We try to provide recreation opportunities that might not be available in other places. We also go to great lengths to make sure, can we do those through cost recovery? Can we still be very competitive and make them accessible, but can we generate revenue to help offset the cost of that? And that is done through the rentals, concessions, sponsorships. You can see the number of programs and the number of participants who are active in these. Parks also is responsible for helping when people want to do a special event. Many of them happen in parks, and there were 36 of those last year. Those are also great for our economic development. I personally love tourists because they come, they spend their money, and they go home. So these kinds of events help that happen. And as you can see, just last year, 7,600 rentals were processed. This includes the shelters. If any of you are thinking about renting a shelter this summer, I really encourage you to do that quickly. We rely heavily on volunteers in a number of ways across the city, but within the Parks Department, you can see the number of hours that the city has benefited from through volunteers, 71 different events. We have a very robust and successful Sound Salmon Solutions partnership to help make sure that habitat is restored and maintained. Economic development. I love our businesses, right? This is one of the things that makes Edmonds unique, is our very unique businesses, locally owned, locally, people work from locally here. We have over 2,100 registered businesses here in Edmonds, and there are 190 different kinds of businesses. We try to help that and try to do promotions of our local businesses. We use social media a lot. We also try to do it, as you can see, within the region. Did I mention how much I like tourism? So if we can get people from the region to come and spend their money here, that's great. Also being featured at the airport where people are coming on their way in, can we give you an idea of a destination? And those are some statistics that the social media has generated. We are a creative economy. We have been a creative economy for a long time, and we're getting better at it. This is the 50th anniversary of the Edmonds Art Commission. I don't know if recently you saw there's new banners up on the International District on 99. They're kind of cool. This is the 40th anniversary of Right on the Sound. I don't know how many of you are familiar with that. It's a big deal. people come from 14 states for this event. It is pretty cool, and we are, I think, the center of the universe for it. We also do the other kinds of things, and tomorrow, if you're down near the waterfront across from the ferry, or near the ferry line, you're going to see there's the start of it down there in the lower right. The gateway canopy is going to be installed tomorrow. 99, as we talk about economic development, that long-term economic development is critical to us, and 99 is an opportunity that we have been working on and needing for a long time. And its time has come. As you've already seen, there are a lot of developments that have taken place on 99, making it better. The next phase is getting ready. The state, thank you, has put $22.5 million in the transportation budget to help us with that. $4.3 million is allocated already for this biennium, and another 18 next time. We are in pre-design for that kind of improvement. Also very exciting, the former Family Fun Center, which periodically you will see catch on fire. We are hoping very soon that their permits will be issued and that we can start to see what will become another great center of commercial opportunity and residential opportunity. And then also we hope in the next month or two, the Apollo Apartments permitting process will be through as well, providing, again, more housing, which is very exciting. Might have heard something about this happening. I don't know what's happening in the world and who can travel where in the future, but at one point the projection was 750,000 people would be coming that did not have tickets. That is an opportunity. And then there are days when things won't be happening, and that is an opportunity. So we have already secured $40,000 in marketing support for that, working with our businesses. 2 of them have already received funding for their watch parties, trying to create a toolkit and help businesses find out how they can get more than their fair share. And then, as we try to do in many areas, how can we collaborate with other cities in the region as well as the county to pool our resources and get people to head in our direction. IT, so as you can see, right, we rely on them so that you can communicate with us with you, that we can communicate with each other, have access to information, and periodically things don't go as well as they should, and these are the folks who fix it. This next statistic might be, this for me was I literally had to say, seriously, is this the number? And I was told, yes, it is. 50 million in a month. 50 million intrusion attempts per month. I think some of you might want to go home and do a virus scan, maybe change a password or two. But this is what they also have helped us protect us with. I don't know how many of you are aware of this that we offer you. It's, if nothing else, you should go home and play with it. This is our GIS infrastructure map, and if you go to maps.edmondswa.gov, there's 20 layers. If you want to go and look around your neighborhood or the whole city and say, where are the fire hydrants? Where are the stop signs? Where are the water pipes? Where's the street light? All that's in there. And you can just go in, and each of those layers, you just click on it, and it'll show you whatever you want, get rid of everything else you want, and it's a cool system. And the person who makes sure that that's up to date and accessible to you is Dave. And you can ask him later about the story behind that picture. HR, everything we do for you relies on staff. Everything we do. And that is not necessarily an easy thing, right? We have, can we, these people are getting blind. Would somebody mind pulling down some of these shades for folks? Thank you. So, we have competition. There are certain industries, and I hate to do that on a day like today, right? There are certain industries that are just not as sexy as they used to be, apparently, and getting individuals to go into those careers. I'll just stop for a second. This is my soundtrack. Thanks, everyone. You guys are great. Thank you. So it's a challenge to get, in certain industries, the funnel's getting shorter. Not as many people are going into those particular career paths. And then we compete against the private sector, right? Which can be, in many ways, more you can fill in that blank. And then if they go into government, then we've got to compete for that, right? So we want to be able to attract the best and then keep the best as long as we can. And that's a big part of what HR has to do. Last year, people retire, people do move away. They filled 34 open positions last year, and we love when we can promote internally, and we did that last year. And we are building a very solid leadership team. Safety, I talked about that before, and risk management, that's also part of what they did. We brought L&I in and said, tell us what we can do better. This all led to, between 22 and 25, we had a 25% reduction in accident claims. That's huge. But what's also impactful is that meant a 91% reduction in our incurred loss. So safety is not just what we should be doing and people coming to work knowing it's safe, but it does have other kinds of benefits as well. Labor relations and employee engagement, we currently have 7 bargaining units at the city. Last year they successfully extended 2 of those, and we are working on improving internal processes there. Again, another metric, looking at how we compared to where we were in the past. This is from 21 to 26, and you can see that we currently have fewer staff than we did in 22. Comparing us to other cities, now this is a per capita, so how many staff do you have per 1,000 people in the population? And again, Redmond, Bothell, Montlake Terrace, Issaquah, Linwood, Renton, and Edmonds. And you can see where we are compared to other cities. Let's talk a bit about money. Before I get into sort of the dollar and cents of things, I did want to share just a perspective of the volume that goes through a city like Edmonds. So our finance team, every dollar goes through them, right? We have 35 different funds. Last year it was like 121 million inbound, 116 outbound, 44,000 transactions. Some more volume. We are also, right, information that is available to you, but also is used for oversight, not just from the community, but council and auditors. Those are the things that take place to make sure that we're doing it. We are introducing a new software program, and it is, I don't know if any of you have done that, but it is a robust, heavy lift, and we've already invested $1,500 in staff training because it affects absolutely every department, and we can only do one phase of this at a time. These are them, the 9 people in our finance department. Another reference point, Linwood, about the same population as us. They have 23. So all of those people that we've been talking about, all of the services and activities that we provide for you, it's all about you, right? The whole reason government exists is to provide these kinds of services for you. And it takes money to do that, and it takes choices. Because what we do or what we don't do, how much of it, the priorities, this is all your choices. So last, the Blue Ribbon Panel, I just want to reference that as soon as I was mayor and realized the depth of our financial crisis, I assembled a Blue Ribbon Panel and asked them for questions. They came back with 40 recommendations. You can see the categories and the numbers in each. To date, we have implemented or put in progress 28 of those. 6 are partially implemented, 1 is currently planned, and so far there are 5 that aren't started yet. In terms of revenues, so here's sort of the dollars side of things. Overall, revenues were behind budget by a little under $2 million, primarily for 3 big reasons. One was retail tax were lower. That wasn't just unique to Edmonds, that was true all over the region. In addition to that, the automated camera enforcement, the red light cameras, we were not able to get those online as soon as we did, so that had an impact. And then there were some capital projects that were delayed. So overall, we were down from our budget of about 1.87. On the other hand, for expenses, we were able to come in $3.5 million lower than what was in the amended budget. That was primarily, it was through a number of things. As I mentioned, parks was one of those. So $1.1 million in supplies and services, a little over $2 million in labor and benefits. Here's what it looks like if you look at all that on one page. It's basically what I just said. So the decrease in revenues, expenses were well managed. We had originally projected $1.4 million as our fund balance. Our fund balance is our reserve fund. So whatever drops to the bottom, that's our reserve fund. And you try to keep that at a specific level. So when we went into it, we projected it would be at 1.4. Right now, we're thinking it might be 3.8. I always have to qualify it because you never close a year until the auditors close a year, and these numbers change until then. But right now, it's looking like it might be 3.8. Council took some actions to help offset some of those revenue challenges that we had this year. The utility tax, one or two of you might have an opinion about that, but I will point out again that that's only for 18 months at this point. And then you can see the other ones. Those added up to 4.6, but again, the 3.2 is an 18-month commitment. Here's where it goes. So this is, if you sort of look at it through the view of departments, I would just point out that, obviously police, you can see it, it's that big purple one, is by far the biggest. If you were to combine and think of it as safety, just the police and the courts, combining those two together, that's 40% of the revenue goes to safety. Transparency and engagement, right? You need to be able to know what is going on. You need to be able to form an opinion about what's going on. You need to have input in what's going on, and you need to be able to hold us accountable for what's going on. And that is all about transparency. And it's also about engagement and having a role and having a say in what's going on. And I want to talk a bit about all the different ways that we're currently doing that. Not all of them, but many of them. Council is one, right? They're the policy makers. And you can see the number of meetings they have. You can see on the lower left, those are all the way if you want to watch in real time or reruns. There are many opportunities to do it. You have access to the packets that they have. Sometimes they're 700 pages. You have access to everything that they have access to. You can also then, to weigh in on it, you can come to council. You can read on the right. All the different ways that you can weigh in directly and have contact with council, either as a group or independently. Public records request, I mentioned it before, it is different. There is public records request to the city, to the courts, and to the police. We operate each with a few different rules. And you get some interesting requests from time to time. This was an individual who said, I request all available public records related to, in any way, I'm not giving you the name, but a specific, you could look it up if you wanted, a specific former council member. Just the emails that had that individual's name on it, 40,000. And that's just the emails. This is hugely time consuming, but the message is also that if you want it, it's yours. Planning and outreach. This is last year, right? So this is all the different tools and the numbers they use to engage the community in decision making and informing decisions. So in some cases it was one way, right? Like a mailing or a notice of application, and using the media, but open houses, the walks and talks, the neighborhood meetings, webinars, online open houses, a number of different tools for the community to weigh in on the kinds of things that were going on. We have a Fix-It app. Some of you might have used it, so you can just, wherever you are, say, there's an issue here. Street lights out, there's a pothole here. Fix-It app, and you can see that how many of those we got into what department they were relevant. Over almost 15,000 people in Edmonds have said, please email me things that are relevant to the city. So we have an email list of, this doesn't count what Parks does or other departments, just the city in general, almost 15,000 email lists, and we do a quarterly newsletter, and down at the bottom you can see 9,300 people open it. And when you talk about open rates on an email anything, you're going to hear statistics like 3%, 7%. That is amazing and speaks to our community. And then we also, we have a great media. They are everywhere, but we also want to make sure that they are aware of things, and we have generated almost 70 press releases to help them out. Not everybody, by far, gets their information from the media. An awful lot of people rely solely on social media for that, and we rely heavily on Facebook and Instagram. You can see the numbers. You can also see the growth that in Facebook we have an over 163% increase from last year, and our visits and interactions are significant on the Instagram side. The city last year, email's another way to contact us and to talk to us. The city in whole got over 1 million emails inbound last year. 926 came from one person. And you're all thinking somebody else, I just know it. I personally, 37,000 emails went through into my inbox last year, 37,000. Not sure how that compares to any of you, but I also have one-on-one meetings with community members, town halls, the community events. I go to a lot of collaboration meetings so we can get information from lots of different sources, and Ask the Mayor, usually I get a couple hundred people line up for those, and I enjoy those, and we'll be doing them again. Our boards and commissions are another opportunity for the community to weigh in and help inform decision making. That is why they exist, to get community members and in some cases specific experts. The list on the left, now we did freeze those for financial reasons, but I have the power to unfreeze them, as does council, and we did. So the ones on the left are the boards and commissions that did meet last year. Some of them maybe only once, others on multiple occasions, but they did meet and provide guidance. On the right, I'm a big fan of task forces and getting other people's opinions and using experts, and I brought together people to help me in those kinds of decisions for those purposes. All right, 2026, so that's sort of 2025 and where we've been. I'm sort of calling this the hot list. Last year I think I put up my personal list of over 100 of the things that I'd like to do. But this is what I think is sort of the burning list for next year. And I'm going to talk a little bit about each of these, and no surprise about the one that's at the top. So we just gotta stop this temporary fix it and kick the can down the road. And I'm going to talk more about that. But I think as residents, you should have confidence that the services that are being delivered to you today are going to be delivered to you tomorrow. And I think we need to have the stewardship of our resources and our assets, our buildings, our parks, right, our natural spaces, and our money needs to be well stewarded. And wouldn't it be great if we could leave a great foundation for the people who are coming behind us? I don't think we should just be looking to how do we endure, and I think we're living in that place right now. We got to be able to create the future that we want, and wouldn't it be nice every so often if we could dream big? So last year we asked you a couple of times. Here are a couple of choices. We asked if you were open to or how you felt about joining the Regional Fire Authority, right, the RFA, and 62% of you said, yes, we're in, and that happened. We also asked you, how do you feel about a $14.5 million levy lid lift? And you said, no. Almost 59% said no. You made the decision. There is literally nothing that is more statistically valid than this, right, than taking the vote. So those are choices. We heard you, and now we operate in that reality. So some of the things that are also a part of our reality that are informed by these decisions, for every dollar that you pay in property tax, every dollar you pay, less than 9 cents comes to the city. Whoa. There's a microphone right there. Less than 9% comes to the city. This is where it all goes, right? So we said, yes to schools. Some of it goes to the hospital district, regional transit, the port authority. So that's where the rest of it's going. That's where the 91% of it is going, not just us. So when you look at that tax bill, please remember it's the 9 cents that we're talking about. These are, again, another reference point, another metric, how we compare to others. We are the orange line, so this would be the per thousand based on assessed value, and Renton is on the left, Edmonds, Montlake Terrace. Bothell is sort of screaming up there because they have an EMS levy and a levy lid lift, so that's why they're at the height they are. But as you can see, with the exception of Issaquah, we are at the second lowest in comparison to those cities. This is an interesting chart, again, compared to others. So if you were to here's your budget, here's the number of people you have in your city, and you divide it, right? That's a cost, an investment per person, cost per capita. So the cost of government per individual. So the average is that orange line, cost of government. So you can see the investment per individual. So all those things that we provide the city to each of you is basically being done for about $1,200 a year per person through this kind of a statistic. So you can see, other than Montlake Terrace, again, where we lie. The 1%, right? So you said no to the levy lid lift, and council did take the 1% that we are allowed, which is as much as the council can take without your permission. So that's why the levy lid lift has to happen, because council only has the authority to raise it 1% without your permission. So that adds up to $117,000. Raising property tax by 1% brings in $117,000. Whoops, I went too far. Sharon has said that to me more than once. So here's some examples. $117,000. Salaries are going up 2.9%. Not unreasonable, 2.9%, but you can see the dollar impact, $917,000. Benefits, which always go up at a higher rate, another $460,000. Our court fees, $353,000. Our jail costs are going up $188,000. That $117,000 against these increases, you can see the problem. Here is, in terms of, so how have we made it so far, right? How did we get here without having to go out and ask for money? How did we make that happen? Well, we haven't really been making it all that long. This goes back from 2019. So the green lines are revenues, the blue lines are expenses. You want those two to line up. So back in 2019, they didn't line up. There was a gap of almost $400,000. They took money from the reserves. So that's what went on. You can see there was a big hit in 2022 to balance the budget, another $4 million out of the reserves. In 2023, it was a $9.4 million hit on the reserves. And then in 2024, there was the $6.2 million of ARPA money, which was used to balance the budget, but that wasn't enough. Needed another 1.2 out of the reserves. And then in 2025, we took out the $6 million loan. That's how we've been making it happen all along. If we just kept things the way they are, and dealt with sort of, here's inflation, but didn't make any other sort of changes, you can see what the gap is going to be between 2027 to 2031. So that's just sort of a baseline of a gap. This is our operating reserve fund balance is what existed. So the green line is what the city had. The orange line is what the policy is. And the reason that floats is the way the policy is written, it's a percentage of the dollars that we have. So if your budget is up here, the reserves go up with it. If your budget is down here. So the reserve policy floats with the budget. And you can see there was some serious change in the bank through 2022, but you saw on the previous slide when we started eating into it. And then you can now see the impact of what's happened based on our required operating or the policy operating reserves and to where we are. And you can see that visually. This is what that would look like in terms of a financial cushion. The policy is written to, as you can see back in the day, there was almost four months of reserves. I think that's too high. We shouldn't have that in the bank, but you can see where we are. So here's what I think we should be doing. I think we need to create a strategic plan. We can call it something else, but what is that vision of the future that we all agree on? We should be developing a financial forecast. Let's look out like 15 years. Statistically, there are recessions every 7 years. So let's build that into the plan and understand that's happening. In this process of building the strategic plan, we need a very robust, I mean really robust community engagement process. This is a very diverse community. We have 120 languages in our public schools. We have people of all ages, people who live in different geographies and different kinds of housing conditions. We need to make sure people have an opportunity to participate. I failed to mention on number one, in the next couple of months, we will be doing the next version of our statistically valid survey. This also helps us inform what are your priorities, what are the gaps between satisfaction and the priorities. Developing metrics that we can all count. What does success look like? So if somebody says tree canopy, what does that mean, right? Let's come up with some metrics that mean something. I also think the business model has to change for businesses. And collaboration, and I'll talk about that a little more. Then how do we pay for that? Public engagement it's not a one tool or a one approach. It is really, there's five different, in my opinion, there are five ways of public engagement. So inform, up in the right-hand corner, inform is one way. We're going to be tearing up your street. It's a one-way communication. We're just letting you know something's going on. The consult is, what do you think? So the survey would sort of fall into that category. Tell us some thoughts. Involve is more of checking in along the way. So here's where we are now, here's where we are now, what do you think, involving you. Collaborate is, we got to do this together, let's put a team together and collaborate. And in other cases, it's, please make this happen. Oops. So I believe that as we look at public engagement across the city, not just in terms of revenue generation, we need to understand that sometimes we're talking to a neighborhood, sometimes we're talking to the whole city, sometimes we're talking to a piece, sometimes it's about different kinds of things. So we also need to understand that how people get involved or can communicate is different, and we need to not make people come on a Tuesday night and talk to council. We have to provide, like planning was a good example of a number of tools, and there are others. So we need to understand which of those 5 we're doing for any process, what is the typology or method we're going to use, and then create toolboxes that we can use to engage. Catastrophic planning on the list. I live in fear of this. The region is not prepared, and we must advance this. We have created and updated, and it is a darn fine piece of work, our comprehensive emergency management plan. But the reality in an event like that is, whoever name is in the book, it doesn't matter. It matters who's going to be able to show up and get things done. So we need to make sure that people are trained on it. We are also moving our Emergency Operations Center to a new location that is much more appropriate for this work. We are going to reconvene this 30-member group, so this is not just the city, but it's the fire and the police and the schools and the ham operators, right? The hospitals, all of us that are going to have to be involved and be able to communicate in real time. And we need to be meeting on a regular basis. And then we need to be doing training and conduct drills. A couple months ago, the waterfront was blocked, right? Both crossings were blocked for a while, and that was just a reminder that it could be a heart attack or a stroke. Seconds matter. It could be an active shooter. Seconds matter. It could be that a train tips over and spills things, right? We will find a solution to getting over the tracks, and that has to be on 2026 priority list. Development code update. It's a haphazard miss. I am quoting the head of planning. This is something that council members have recognized for a while. They've tried to take actions on it in the past. It hasn't happened. It's going to happen. Here's the plan. Facilities and analysis. So I talked about the strategic plan, which should drive what is the city we want. And we have to look at the future and say, okay, if that's the city we want, what kind of services are we providing? And if those are the services, then what kind of people do we need? And what does that workforce look like in the future? It looks different now than it did in the past. So what kind of workforce do we need? And then what kind of facilities do they need to be able to do their job? And where should those facilities be? And then how do we, does that mean any of our currents can be improved or changed to make that work? Or do we need to move and think about our facilities different? And then how do we make sure we don't get into the position we are now where we are not taking care of our facilities? These are some of the facilities. When I mentioned that we have 40 on the list, all of these are having some capital work done this year. I highlighted the wastewater treatment plant. 2 or 3 of you might have heard we're having a few issues with it. We are still continuing to ship our poop to Oregon. And that's not good. It's been going on that way for a long time, and we have been doing things and working the problem and done a lot of improvements at the wastewater treatment plant. And again, as I mentioned before, there's the water side, the solid side. This is the solid side. And we've made a number of improvements around this system, around the gasifier, to try to make sure that it is now in a better position to operate. It is our hope, our expectation, that hopefully by the mid to end of April, we're going to know. And like any organization should do, we have a plan B to be able to advance if this should not work as we wanted to or contracted to. This is a big deal. It is not just us. The state of Washington is involved. A number of corporations are involved. A publicly traded company is a part of this. There are a lot of contracts involved. So we have to follow the process that we're using and honoring the contracts that we signed. But we will also hold people accountable to the contracts that they signed. Esperance, back on the list. we have had initial discussions with the county about this. We have also done exploratory discussion with some of the community members. There seems to be interest from the community, proactively from the community, talking to us about annexation of Esperance. We have identified a map with milestones that if this does pan out, we could get there in 16 and a half months. And first thing we got to do is do a feasibility study. Does this even make sense? Does this pencil out? So we're working on it. I talked about collaboration. This to me is a huge, huge key to the future. And I work with the mayors throughout the county, but a lot with the South County mayors. A part of what we're doing, and Edmonds is leading that charge, is identifying what are all the opportunities we have for collaboration. In some cases, it's human resources, in some cases, it's stuff. For example, last year, we painted the stripes in Mukilteo. Do we all need our own paint striping machine? So looking at all sorts of opportunities to collaborate and leverage our resources. I think this is way, way more where the future is going, is looking at these kinds of regional collaborations and sharing resources. And Sharon, if that's you telling me to slow down, she told me she would signal me. I don't think it was that. And then system improvements, right? What are all the ways we can do our work better? So I mentioned the financial software. This will be a huge, huge, that was archaic. I was there a month and somebody showed me a stack of papers this big. And I said, what is that? And they said, oh, that's time slips for one department for 2 weeks, which then had to be manually keyed in, right? That's how old some of this technology is that the city's working with. And we're fixing it so that we have better information and we have people doing stuff they should be doing instead of keying in paper. Raise your hand if you have ever volunteered for a nonprofit. That's us, right? This is Edmonds. This is Edmonds. We are a community of service. And Brian Baird is in the back. He was introduced earlier. He has started a national program saying we need to recognize service. We need to celebrate service. And he came up with this concept of exactly that. So in Edmonds, it is our intention, there are other cities involved. We won't be the only, like Chicago apparently wants to do this, but we will be the first community of service in the country. And what that means is on April 15th, IRS recognizes over 400 tax-exempt organizations in Edmonds. Now, some of those are family foundations, but over 400. So on April 15th, I will be sending out an invitation with our partners of the Chamber and other organizations like the Waterfront Center and with Brian. And we're going to invite them to this launch meeting to talk about this concept of can we create an environment where we walk around and celebrate individuals who it's, you know, here is a big picture with the feed the young and a volunteer talking about why he helps feed young people. And this will also be intended to help people match make, right? So I didn't know about that organization. I have a passion for that organization. Another beauty of this is all those organizations probably don't know each other. And imagine the collaboration that can happen among these organizations and unleash that potential that is Edmonds. That's who we are. So when I used to talk about volunteers being the secret sauce of Edmonds, this is what I'm talking about. And your hands up in the air is what I'm talking about. The municipal court, we have 3 branches in the municipal court, and I'm not going to tell you anything about them because the judge will. He is giving his annual report to the city council on March 24th, and I encourage you to watch that in real time, or you can certainly watch it in reruns. I know this is a lot. As has happened in the past, Edmonds Civic Roundtable will be hosting an evening with me. We intend to do something a little different this year. I will be bringing the directors because people have different questions about different things or they want to put different thoughts into our heads. So the directors will be there for each of the departments as well. So you will have certainly direct access to me if you want it, but also if your interest is in parks or interest is in finance, that opportunity will exist here at the Waterfront Center. So I talked about wanting to leave you with a song in your heart. We created a song and a video to celebrate this frickin' amazing place, right? How smart are we to live here? So I will not be coming back at the end of this video. That will be the end of our presentation tonight. Also, for those people who watch this and say, well, that looks expensive. What did that cost? He just told us we had no money. It didn't cost the city anything, not a penny. So with that, I hope you enjoy this. I really thank you for coming. And here we go.
A fantastic place in the great Northwest, Edmonds. You came to ride the ferry but decided to stay, 'cause it's a Edmonds kind of day. The views are amazing, take a look around. If it's charming you're after, just visit downtown. Everywhere you look there is culture on display. It's a Edmonds kind of day. Kind of day. A fantastic place in the great Northwest, Edmonds. You came to ride the ferry but decided to stay, 'cause it's a Edmonds kind of day. A fantastic place in the great Northwest, Edmonds. You came to ride the ferry but decided to stay, 'cause it's a Edmonds kind of day.
All right, everyone take